Texas death row inmates will no longer get the last meal of their choosing. Prison officials are changing the rules after what happened Wednesday. White supremacist Lawrence Russell Brewer was about to be executed for the 1998 murder of an East Texas black man, James Byrd. KXAN's David Scott tells us why the last meal that Brewer ordered was the last straw.
Hello and welcome to the channel. In today's video, we will be looking into the last meals of inmates who were executed in the United States. Today's video will be based in the state of Texas. Lawrence Russell Brewer. Brewer was sentenced to death for the unlawful racial fused killing of James Byrd Jr. in 1998. Brewer, his accomplices Sean Berry and John, who was also sentenced to death, who were all KKK members. During the trial, the prosecution claimed that Brewer was a racist psychopath and said to the media before he was executed, "As far as any regrets, no, I have no regrets. No, I'd do it all over again, to tell you the truth." He was sentenced to death and was executed by lethal injection on the 21st of September, 2011. His last meal request was controversial and ruined it for future death row inmates. He ordered 2 chicken fried steaks with gravy and sliced onions, a triple patty bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers and jalapenos, a bowl of fried okra with ketchup, 1 pound of barbecued meat with half a loaf of white bread, 3 fully loaded fajitas, a meat lover's pizza, 1 pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts on top, and 3 root beers. When the prison officials presented him with the meal, he refused to eat it, claiming he wasn't hungry. The meal was thrown away and the last meal in Texas was terminated with immediate effect because of Brewer.
Tonight, more than 20 years after one of the most gruesome hate crimes in this country, the ringleader in the dragging death of James Byrd Jr. has been executed. John William King, convicted in Byrd's murder after his death in 1998. Our Sophia Bosley was in Huntsville for the execution of John William King and tells us what happened.
The Texas Department of Criminal Justice says it took 12 minutes from the time the order was given for the lethal injection to the time that John King was pronounced dead. The family of James Byrd Jr. says tonight justice was served. James Byrd Jr. would have been 70 this year, but his life was cut short 21 years ago in a brutal hate crime.
Today, we witnessed
John King was sentenced to death along with Lawrence Brewer for the racially motivated death of James Byrd Jr. He was executed by lethal injection on the 24th of April, 2011. He was the worst out of the 3, with him having racist tattoos such as a black man hanging from a tree, the words Aryan Pride, Nazi symbols, and the patch for a gang of white supremacist inmates known as the Confederate Knights of America. Before he was sentenced, he said with pride, knowing he was probably going to be put to death for the killing regardless of the outcome of this, "We have made history." Death before Dishner. I know he didn't have a last meal because of Brewer, but I had to include him in this. His last meal would have probably been what the prison cafeteria served to all prisoners that night. Richard Cartwright. Richard Cartwright was sentenced to death for the shooting and stabbing of Nick Morarida, who he planned to rob with a bunch of friends whilst posing as male prostitutes because they would be more reluctant to report anything to the police in 1996, and was executed by lethal injection on the 19th of May, 2005. His last meal included fried chicken, a cheeseburger, onion rings, French fries, bacon, sausage, cheesecake, and cinnamon rolls. Douglas Allen Roberts. Douglas Allen Roberts was sentenced to death in 1996 for the attempted robbery and eventual stabbing and running over with a car of 40-year Jerry Velez. Roberts was executed by lethal injection on the 20th of April, 2005. His last meal included 3 southern fried chicken breasts, 2 bacon, lettuce and tomato sandwiches, 3 enchiladas, ground beef, 2 grilled pork chops, 6 corn tortillas, 4 deviled eggs, 12 green olives with Italian ketchup, butter beans and cabbage seasoned with hambone, broccoli with cheese sauce, fried onion rings, French fries, tomato, lettuce, cheese, picante sauce, onions and jalapenos. Johnny Frank Garrett. Johnny Frank Garrett was sentenced to death for the assault and strangulation of a Catholic nun in 1981. His case was controversial because he was only 17 at the time of the sentence and he was suffering from learning difficulties due to his past beatings from his stepfather. He was executed by lethal injection on the 11th of February, 1992. His last meal was just simply ice cream. Charles Brooks Jr. Charles Brooks Jr. was sentenced to death for the shooting of mechanic David Gregory in 1977, who was in the car Brooks Jr. was test driving and stole. He was executed by lethal injection on the 7th of December, 1982. Brooks Jr. was the first overall inmate and first African-American inmate to be executed since 1964 and also was the first inmate in Texas to be executed by lethal injection. His last meal included a T-bone steak, French fries, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, biscuits, peach cobbler and iced tea. Stephen Peter Morin. Stephen Peter Morin was sentenced to death in February 1984. He was convicted of the killings of Carrie Marie Scott and Jana Bruce, hence the capital punishment. However, it is estimated Morin had killed 4 to 48 young girls, women, and men between the years 1969 to 1981. Morin was also given a death sentence in Utah in late 1984 for the killing of Cheryl Daniel, but it was Texas that executed him. He was executed by lethal injection on the 13th of March, 1985, making Morin the 6th inmate in Texas to be executed using the method since 1982. His last meal included steak, baked potatoes, butter, green pea salad, banana pudding, and coffee. James Emery Paister and Stephen Albert McCoy. James Emery Paister was sentenced to death for the killing of Robert Howard in 1983. He was already serving 3 life terms without parole in Alabama, which was given to him in 1982 for unrelated charges. However, he was interviewed by the police to whom he confessed to. He was moved to Texas where he stood trial for Howard's killing and was given the death sentence on the 21st of September, 1983. Paister killed at least 3 people with his accomplice Stephen Albert McCoy, who was also sentenced to death. Paister was executed by lethal injection on the 20th of September, 1989. His last meal included steak, salad, French fried potatoes, and watermelon. Stephen Albert McCoy, who was the accomplice of Paister, was sentenced to death on the 26th of July, 1984 for the killing of Cynthia Dorleen Johnson. Even though Paister was the person who strangled Cynthia, the reason why McCoy got the death sentence for Cynthia's death was because Paister was already holding a death sentence. McCoy was executed by lethal injection on the 24th of May, 1989. His last meal included a cheeseburger, French fries, and a strawberry milkshake. Ronald Clark O'Brien. Ronald Clark O'Brien was sentenced to death for the poisoning of his son Timothy in June 1975. Dubbed by the press as the Candyman, the man who ruined Halloween and the Pixie Sticks killer, O'Brien was in debt of $100,000 and he took out a life insurance policy on both his children. He laced 6 Pixie Sticks with cyanide powder and took them trick-and-treating. Handed out the candy to both his children and 4 other children in the neighborhood. Only Timothy ate the candy after his father forced him to eat the laced stick. The jury took only 46 minutes to convict O'Brien for the killing of his son and 71 minutes to give him the death penalty. After several stays of executions which were in August 1980, May 1982, the 8th anniversary of the death of Timothy in October 1982, which would have made O'Brien the first inmate in Texas to be executed by lethal injection by Charles Brooks Jr., received that title. O'Brien was eventually executed by lethal injection on the 31st of March, 1984. His last meal included T-bone steak, medium to well done, French fries and ketchup, whole kernel corn, sweet peas, lettuce and tomato salad with egg and French dressing, iced tea, sweetener, saltines, Boston cream pie, and rolls. Odell Barnes Jr. Odell Barnes Jr. was sentenced to death in 1990 for the assault and killing of Helen Bass in November 1989. Barnes Jr. was given 2 life sentences for the assaults of 2 women, aggravated robbery, 4 counts of robbery, and burglary as well. After many appeals, Barnes Jr. was executed by lethal injection on the 1st of March, 2000. His last meal request wasn't a last meal. Odell Barnes Jr. requested world peace, equality, and justice. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell for future true crime uploads. Now on to the death row inmate and his last meal. James David Autry. James David Autry was sentenced to death for the robbery and several killings of one store clerk, and 2 innocent bystanders who he didn't want as witnesses in April 1980. He originally asked for his execution to be televised as he wanted people to believe he was actually being executed. That request was denied. Even though the method lethal injection was used according to Autry, either hanging or beheading was more manly than the lethal injection. He was meant to put to death on the 4th of October, 1983, but when he was strapped to the gurney and the needles were physically in his veins, a stay of execution came through. He was eventually executed by lethal injection on the 14th of March, 1984, which made Autry the second inmate from Texas to be executed since the death penalty got reinstated. His last meal included hamburger, French fries, and a Dr. Pepper. Thanks again for watching. Please leave me a comment on what state you want me to visit next. Make sure to stick around the next installment. This is True Crime with Chess.